Hey guys, welcome to Tom Talks. On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about
Dallas needs to shake that monkey off its back.
reverse aging. Is it now possible?
Your next house may come out of a nozzle.
The safest neighborhoods in Fort Worth.
And DFW really pulled together this week.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. My name is Tom Jung.
And I'm Jack Lisenby, co-host.
Yeah, all right. And obviously, this is a little bit different this week. We are real estate agents. If you're tuning in for the first time, we say it's a little bit different because we're snowed in. It's Texas, and so whenever snow falls, people freak out and everything closes. Actually, this time it's actually a little bit worse. All the roads kind of froze over. It thawed and then it froze, and
it snowed, and then it all turned to water, and then got cold again.
Yeah. So, anyways, we are doing this from our house. But yeah, we are real estate agents here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you're looking to buy or sell, we would love to work with you. You can find us at tomstexasrealty.com or on Facebook and Instagram at tomstexasrealty, and we're on TikTok at tom.things. So anyways, man, how's been being cooped up in the house for the last 3-4 days?
Not bad. I mean, you saw my setup, so I've been doing work, and in between that, I've got plenty of ways to entertain myself. Not too worried about it.
Yeah, Jack's got a legit setup there. You look like you're a professional gamer.
Yeah, I spent way too much time and money on it.
That's awesome. Well, cool, man. So what are we kicking it off with?
So we had talked about it, I think a couple of weeks ago, where Dallas, actually their zoo, had a bit of an incident with some langur monkeys as well as a leopard, a cloud leopard. Yep. One of which had escaped and the other one had been broken into. But we've had a couple more developments there. So this is a bit of a follow-up story. So the Dallas Zoo had last week a vulture, let's see here. It was pinned the lappet-faced vulture. It looks a lot like a turkey vulture, but with a little bit less turkey to it. Okay. It had died, and they had 4 of these, and one of them just mysteriously out of nowhere died. And whenever they did the necropsy on it, which is like an autopsy for animals, okay, they found.
Why is it called something different?
I'm honestly not sure, but the article made sure to specify that.
Okay.
But so whenever they did the necropsy on it, it had a very mysterious wound in it, like somebody had like torn into it almost. But they're not cannibalistic creatures or anything from what I gather, so it was very mysterious, but they didn't find anything that indicated that the habitat had been broken into. Well, they chalked that up as like very coincidental, but very weird timing until this week.
Were they looking at bird suicide?
No, actually. They just kind of were like, that's odd, and kind of went about their way. But with the events in the past, they're like, let's keep an eye on that. So what they did was this week, it turned out that they had 2 emperor tamarin monkeys. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but they have like these big whiskers. They look like old men. And 2 of them just mysteriously went missing overnight and were gone for a couple of days.
A lot of foul play going on.
Right, exactly. And so this is especially crazy because Dallas Zoo had upped their security, like almost tripled the nightly staff, as well as increased cameras. They've got solar-powered cameras that are directly lined to the local police in case anything comes up. They've got more people walking the parks and checking more scrupulously the enclosures and stuff like that. They did end up finding the monkeys, though, if anyone's curious, and you'll never guess where they found them.
Where were they?
In a closet in Lancaster.
What? Somebody stole the monkeys and put them in a closet?
Yeah, okay. So I was trying not to make too many jokes in the tagline about all of that, but there was just so many to pick from. So they got an anonymous tip that the monkeys may have been in what was thought to be an abandoned house in Lancaster, about 20 minutes away from the zoo. And whenever they go there, lo and behold, they find these 2 monkeys just trapped in a closet, basically. So it is absolutely foul play at this point, and they've involved the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're assisting on the investigation, and they've also offered a $10,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest and indictment for this case. So
I still think
this
they need to be looking at the apes. I think the apes had something to do with this.
it's like Ape Escape or that Madagascar movie where they're all trying to get out of the zoo. It absolutely
Yeah.
has to be in this. The vulture was just casualty, unfortunately.
Okay, so it's an abandoned house. So like, all right, so they're thinking that somebody broke these monkeys out, was like,
Mhm.
follow me, I'm gonna put you up in this house. And then yeah, or maybe the monkeys figured it out and they're like, hey, we heard of this, somebody told us about a vacant house. We're gonna go move into it. And then
Yeah, they
couldn't
heard it
figure
was
out how to
Party
work
City.
couldn't figure out how to work the
Well,
closet door.
to be fair, I have a barn door style door in
Mm-hmm.
front of my water heater closet at the house, and the cats they know how to open it and they know how to close it, but they don't know how to open it from the inside. So it's entirely possible that the monkeys are on the same level where it was open. They both made their way inside. The only two monkeys around, so they just happened to hang out together. They closed the door and couldn't get it back open.
Yeah, can you imagine though, like if one of the neighbors, like, all right, let's say there were some people involved,
Right.
and as a neighbor, you're like, is that guy walking two monkeys into that house?
I mean, that's probably how the anonymous tip went whenever they saw some dude with monkeys and was like, that's not normal.
Yeah, there's some dude over here with two really hairy kids. I don't know what's
Yeah.
up.
So they don't have a person yet that they could deem responsible or even a suspect at the moment.
I
But
love
this
this.
development has me like on the edge of my chair. This is like my little pet article that I'm looking for every week.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Hopefully,
Mhm.
hopefully it gets better. The plot thickens.
Indeed.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Another story, somewhat animal related, is the breakthrough in. Oh man, I did not put enough detail down on this, but there's been a breakthrough in the anti-aging research lately,
Hmm.
and the animal part comes from the testing. They were testing on mice, so it's been very interesting. So I heard about this about a week ago. There's a major breakthrough. Basically, they were able to age these mice and then reverse their aging. So essentially, they had the experiment that was done is they took mice that were genetically identical, so they cloned them or whatever, and
Mm-mm.
so they've got these group of mice, and basically, the theory was, and this is man, it was like doing it's like going back into grade school learning about biology again. But basically, we have DNA, which is the strand of DNA that's forever long. There's like, I don't know, 20,000 different, the
Mm-hmm.
four letters, whatever. Anyways, and then, depending on what's activated, those are called your genes. And then you have these basically proteins that, tell it what to do. Well, anyways, long story short, the theory or the theory that these guys had was that whenever you've got you know 20,000 different things going on, things break and the cells repair themselves, and basically they have these little worker guys. I'm doing a horrible job of explaining this. Like they were using all these big words, and I was like, I don't know what those mean. But basically, they have these little workers. Basically, in your body, in your cells, there
Mm-hmm.
are basically a million breaks a minute going on in your cells, and these proteins are going in and repairing everything. So over time, as it's happening, apparently they're not repaired correctly. You start to have issues with the cells, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was their theory on what was happening as far as aging goes. Is basically you can think of it as making a copy. So if you have a picture and you put it in the scanner and you print it out, and you take it, you put it in the scanner and print it out over time, if your printer heads aren't clean, that photo is not going to come out very well. So they discovered a few years ago that they could go in and reprogram a cell to basically act like it did when it was new. And so I thought of this like, okay, you can go in and clean the printer heads and then reset the print and start over. And they were actually, this was about 2 years ago, they were able to cure blindness in mice by doing this. So basically, they would inject, they have a way for them to go in and basically repair these cells. But the issue is, if they stop doing the injection, the cells quickly revert to the damaged condition or the aged condition. So, anyways, this newest test basically proved that their theory is right on the breaking of these DNA strands and repairing or whatever it is. So basically, they've figured out there is a way to reverse aging, and so I guess the next thing is going to be how do you do it so, or how can you do it so you don't have to get an injection every 2 weeks or whatever to,
Mm,
to stay young. And so I think this has a lot of implications. I mean, this did, I mean, this is going to be really huge breakthrough stuff over the next 5-10 years, I feel like.
yeah.
So just the fact that they can reprogram cells, they can reprogram to be different cells, like they've figured all that out already. And um, not that this is going to cure cancer or anything like that, but I think that, I mean, like if everything, if you can get most of the cells in your body to be performing like they were when they were new, I mean, that could be huge. I think the mice
Yeah.
in this experiment, they lived, if I did the math correctly, I think it was like 7% longer than the other mice.
Hmm.
So there was some additional longevity to their life. And they were also, but also in this experiment, they were targeting like certain areas. So it wasn't like they were trying to keep the entire mouse young. So, anyways, very interesting stuff. I'm doing a horrible job of explaining it, but it's very exciting.
I think it'd be really interesting because there's already a couple of animals that are considered immortal, like certain types of lobsters essentially have whatever it is that allows them to replicate their DNA almost perfectly. And their only limiting factor as far as life goes is just their size, from what I
Yeah.
understand. So, I mean, we know it's theoretically possible. Now, I'm just curious what kind of implications or what kind of changes to life would happen if people started living for longer.
Yeah, dude.
It might
That's,
be like China whenever they had to limit their childbirth rate. Like, there's a lot of political implications for people living forever, essentially.
yeah, that'd be, man, it'd be very interesting. I mean, I wonder if America would slow down at all. Everybody
Yeah,
works so hard to get ahead and everything. I wonder if we'd become more like Europe, where you work to
right.
live. Yeah.
I was gonna say like, I'm not feeling like I want kids at 80. I give it another 40 years, and then I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Well, apparently, like I think in the Bible and whatnot, people used to live to be like 500 years old or something like that.
Yeah, I think they calculated that out a couple of times.
Yeah. So it's crazy stuff. But I will put, there is actually, so this was a Harvard study, and I will put a link. There's a video where you can actually see the mice. It's kind of crazy. Um, but there's a video that kind of explains this probably a lot better than I just did. But I'll put it in the YouTube description. So for anybody that's curious to see more.
Man, that's pretty cool. Well, I mean, as far as applying the medicine for this goes, or whatever that is that they apply to the mice, they probably use a needle. But as far as applying new building ideas, these guys are using a 3D printer, and it might change the way that we do new home construction. But I wanted to talk about that because it might not as well. So these
Okay.
guys, there's
We
there's two cities here in DFW that have been implementing 3D printing for houses. So for anyone who may not know, 3D printing is essentially what it sounds like. You take a printer that would normally print like text on paper, and then you just extrude whatever that is layer by layer in the y-axis to create a 3D sculpture. And usually they've been used for things like machining or prototyping, engineering. But one genius at one point, I didn't get a chance to do enough research to figure out who, but somebody thought, why don't we do this with houses? So at some point, they started taking concrete as the building material, and they would do a layer on the ground and then a layer on top of that, and they would keep going and keep going until the house was built from the bottom up. And it ended up working. They used concrete; it would harden and then keep the shape of the house. I'm sure they use certain types of things, coagulatives, to keep the concrete in place, but it ended up working.
I've seen some of
And
this.
yeah,
It's quite cool because you no longer have to have your box, right? So
yeah,
you can do curved walls and things like that.
mm-hmm,
And if I remember correctly, the insulation value is actually halfway decent because the walls are a little bit thicker,
mm-hmm.
I believe, whenever they're printing these.
Yeah, they're each layer of the wall, from what it looked like, was about 3 to 4 inches thick, which is a lot thicker than like the drywall, particle board, whatever they end up
Mm-hmm.
using in most houses. Um,
I was
So
thinking it was
actually,
thicker
yeah.
than that. I was thinking it was like 8 to 10 inches, but maybe not.
Well, I don't know about that thing, but it
Okay.
probably was like closer to 6 inches, but just from the video, it was a little harder to tell.
Okay.
Um, but so far, there've only been just shy of 50,000 homes in the U.S. that have been built via 3D printing. As of, or, I'm sorry, scratch that. Of the 50,000 homes that were built last year in Dallas, only a scant few of them were 3D printed, and there were two specific, not in Dallas, but two specific cities where they've started cropping up: Nevada and Mabank or Maybank. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but just right outside of Dallas.
That's down by the lake,
Oh, okay,
like
gotcha. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Cedar Creek.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so why that's important is because there are less than 10 3D printable, like 3D printers for homes in the US right now. And for two of them to be in Texas is pretty good. Uh, but I wanted to talk about some of the pros and cons because a lot of people probably don't know much about it because it's not very well commercialized at the moment. So, like, some of the biggest pros to this is obviously building cost. Concrete, I mean, right now concrete's a little bit more expensive,
It's a little
but
pricey. Yeah.
yeah, as opposed to all the other things that go into housing construction, dirt cheap if you can get it in bulk. It's essentially like a coagulative water and some sort of substrate, usually rock or sand. So,
Are the roofs made out of concrete?
so from what I understand, the roofs are generally not.
Okay.
I've, I guess they potentially could, but
Yeah,
it's just heavy and hard to build that way.
if they built them like the Romans,
Mm-hmm.
where, but yeah, I don't think you would be able to 3D print that because basically,
Mm-hmm.
like those roofs were dependent on basically all the pieces,
Right.
yeah, meeting in the middle. So they
Well,
could
for
3D print the pieces and then put them up top, I guess.
so from what I saw, they had a lot of the houses that they showed in the showcase were flat tops. So
Okay.
it looked like they were either using like some sort of tin or maybe a composite material. But it was definitely not concrete from what
Okay.
I saw. Um, and for anyone who's wondering, if you take a look at this in the building process, it looks very wavy and uneven. So what they'll normally do is they will come through with some sort of drywall or something and finish it, so it looks normal on the inside. It doesn't look like just straight concrete. You're not walking into a prison cell. Um, but so it could provide a lot more affordable housing, as well as the fact that it could also provide a lot more consistent housing, because we've been through a lot of new builds, and even in like between builders, obviously there's going to be differences in quality, but even within a certain builder's series, you're going to see a lot of difference from one to the other. Things like nicks, cuts, bumps, scrapes, whatever. But on top of that, just like manufacturing differences, difference in qualities of material used. Whereas with this, since it's coming out of the nozzle, it has to meet a certain criteria in order to go through the machine properly. So you're going to get much more consistent materials as well as products, which is great because it takes a lot of the guesswork out for people who don't know anything about building houses. Um, it's estimated to be only about 2/3 of the cost. So whenever they ran the estimate for building a home at about $300,000, they came in with a 3D printer, and it only came out to about $200,000 at the end of the project. So it's cheaper for builders as well as for buyers. It's early in the technology's progress, which means that there's a lot of room for improvement, especially if this ends up getting commercialized and picked up. Because, like I said, right now there's single-digit number of these in the U.S. They're very hard to get a hold of. And then it's also reducing construction waste. So we have less packaging materials to deal with. We have less scrap material to deal with. It's almost all being used aside from what the workers consume. So a lot of pros, honestly, especially environmentally uh, for people who are looking at new homes. But there's also an interesting list of cons that I'd like to go over too, because when you think about a 3D printer, if you've ever seen one, it's essentially a print head that's on a rail or a track system that can move around on top of a base plate. So it's limited by its size to however big the machine actually is. And same with 3D printers, this machine also has limitations, and the upper limit seems to be about 1,700 square feet. So if you're looking at a large house, this probably isn't going to be the way to go. This is definitely for lower end production houses, and just to meet like entry market demands. Um, it also lacks intricacy. So if you're looking at especially complex designs, it's probably going to struggle. This is meant for the big structural walls, like your four walls and a door, like what we got over here. If you're looking for any kind of fancy architecture, this is probably not going to end up working out. It's just unfortunately a limitation of the technology. Um,
Yeah, how would they do doorways?
so doorways, they do come in with like cross members and stuff like that for above the door,
Okay,
and yeah, and fit everything. So they take a door frame, put it in place, and fit it with like essentially lag bolts to the structure. And
gotcha.
that's another downside is once something's in place, it's not going anywhere. Do you want an extra socket or wall outlet in your living room? Well, guess what? Go screw yourself because you're gonna have to cut into concrete to do that.
Yeah,
Another great limitation. And then limited material types as well. It has to go through the printer. So if you want something out of like acacia or something like that, you're going to have to get it built. They're not going to be able to 3D print that.
interesting. One of the things that the Amish do when they build is so the exterior wall of the house is there's basically two walls. You've got the exterior wall, and then you've got enough room for a person to fit through before like the framing.
Hmm.
So like if you need to do something behind the wall, you can literally get in between it and move things around, which maybe that becomes the thing that they do with the 3D printing is you've got a gap in between. So if you did need to run
Mm-hmm.
something, you could, but
Yeah.
that's definitely
That,
going through
that would
concrete's not easy.
that would be interesting because the way 3D printing usually works is they'll have what's called infill for anyone who doesn't know. So you'll have your outside wall, and then inside you'll have infill, which is usually like a zigzag of material to hold it in place and help with the stability of it. But that infill would get in the way of people being able to do stuff like that.
Sure. You know,
So then, yeah.
the other thing that's interesting when I first saw this was that they were using concrete. Like
Mm-hmm.
most 3D printers use some kind of plastic, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting that they don't use plastic for whatever reason.
I think the polymer might actually just be more expensive because to do stuff like that in bulk, like
That
I'm
makes
thinking of like
sense.
the cost of PLA fiber in general is just really expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense. It does make yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably just a cost thing and the fact that we can do concrete in such large amounts
Yeah.
because it's just like I
It's
said,
dirt,
rock.
right?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Dirt and water.
Yeah.
Huh. Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
had a question come up. What is the safest part of Fort Worth? And it's well, unfortunately, it's not where these concrete homes are.
Hmm.
As far as well, I made two lists here. I've got the safest suburbs in Fort Worth, and then I also have the safest cities, like in the suburbs. So
Hmm.
and then on top of that, I found some interesting crime statistics when I was going through all of this. So um, anyhow, first off, we have let's do suburbs first. Um, and this is primarily actually this wasn't surprising at all. So I was looking at a couple different crime maps. You've got citydata.com, city-data.com, and
Hmm.
then I was also looking on Tarrant County's crime map, and it was kind of disturbing how many crimes happen around me. But
Oh man, yeah.
it's like
Whenever
there
I
aren't
opened that
many.
map the other day, I was thoroughly surprised.
Yeah, and I'm like, surely they're just doing better tracking over here. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
But no, I was looking at a couple different things. So, and unfortunately, a lot of the data on these websites only went through 2019 on some of them.
Okay.
So these aren't going to be, it's not 100%, but it should be pretty close. The All right. So if you just had a guess, give me two of the safest suburbs in the area.
I would imagine Tanglewood and Westover Hills or
Okay.
Westworth Hills.
Not subdivisions, suburbs.
Suburbs. Oh, I guess Walsh Ranch and
Walsh is part of Fort Worth. That's still a subdivision.
mm,
It's like its own city, but still part of Fort Worth. I'm talking.
Benbrook?
Benbrook wasn't bad actually.
Okay. Then
Um,
I guess North Richland Hills?
yeah, that one didn't do so well. Is
Hmm.
is the Northeast Mall in North Richland Hills?
I actually don't know. I don't go to malls.
Yeah, a lot of crime in that area, which is
Oof.
so that was the thing that's kind of difficult. So most of these maps, they do it's kind of like a heat map thing, and they show you crime per 1,000 people or whatever. And a lot of crimes happen around commercial areas. So it's kind of tough when you're looking right next to a big commercial space like a mall with all those, supporting shops. But
Hmm.
anyways, so the top three: Keller, very safe; Mansfield, which also makes a lot of sense because there's not a whole lot. There's,
Yeah. It's a
you
little
know,
bit removed.
yeah, and there's not a ton of like commercial stuff there either. And let's see here, Saginaw. I was surprised to see
Hmm.
that. Saginaw, for the most part, was really safe, except for there was like this one block that looked like Nevada, which was just like beat red, like don't go there.
Hmm.
And I looked it up on a map, and it's all like industrial stuff. So I'm sure there
Gotcha.
was usually anytime you've got industrial stuff, it seems like there's a ton of theft. And then Joshua. So
Hmm.
and what wasn't surprising about the map is the more dense the population, the more crime there is. So basically, once you got out of like the 820 loop going west, it was all super green on the map, like very little
Hmm.
crime. And so that makes sense. You got more space. You're probably not as likely to get mad and do something stupid. But the other thing that I ran across while I was looking at this was um they had like they took all the crimes from like a 10-year period
Hmm.
and did like this little map of when the crimes are committed. And so it's kind of a heat map of when, like during the week. It was like a week long, hour by
Yeah.
hour, when are crimes committed. So what would you think most most crime when are most crimes committed?
I would imagine either during the day when everyone's at work or like Saturday nights.
Okay, yeah. So close.
Oh.
So Saturday and Sunday. So basically Friday night and Saturday night,
Hmm.
between midnight and 2 a.m. A lot of crime. Makes
Okay.
sense. You're
Noted.
off, whatever.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, during the week, I thought the same thing. People are at work. No, it's like when people get off work, it was like from 3 to 6 p.m. is when most crime during the week happens.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, we're off
You know,
work. Let's go do some crime before we go
you,
home.
you know what? What is the parameters for crime? Like, is speeding in that metric? Because that would make a
Uh,
lot of sense. If everyone's getting off work, you have more accidents. You have more people, a higher rate of people going by. So if you have like a cop sitting on the side of the road, he's going to have more throughput.
that does make sense actually.
Yeah.
There's
And the
more.
weekend thing, that one made sense to me because I remember like Texas has really high drunk driving rates and it always spikes after church.
Yeah,
So it's like, I imagine if they're increasing, if they're counting like nonviolent crime, like, drinking and driving in the statistic, it would spike around those times.
I don't think that like speeding tickets would be, but yeah, but I can see if there's more movement, there's more
Hmm.
potential for people to cross paths, right? But I guess the counter to that is the safest time during the day from 5 to 8 a.m.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do shit around that time either.
Yeah, 5 to 6, there's virtually no crime happening.
Hmm.
Yeah, and but okay, so here's the craziest thing. Thursdays. Thursdays, people crime takes the day off on Thursday for some
Hmm.
reason. It's much lower throughout the entire day for some reason. I don't know.
Good to know.
Yeah, Thursday. Go figure. I guess people I don't know. I have no explanation for that. Why Thursday?
I mean, it's cool to know.
Yeah. So anyways, so subdivisions of Fort Worth. So Fort Worth proper. You said Westover Hills, Tanglewood, and Westover Hills is correct. That is probably the safest place in Fort Worth, according to the data I was looking at. Overton West
Hmm.
was up there as well, which is right next to Tanglewood,
Hmm.
and then Mira Vista, which
That
makes
makes sense.
sense.
Yeah.
Are they gated? Is that a gated community?
I think they have some parts of it that are,
Yeah.
but I've driven through there before, so it's not entirely gated.
Okay. Yeah. So major pluses to those communities. And then the other one too. There's a difference between like the different maps. Basically, if you were just looking at violent crimes, then Arlington Heights was
Hmm.
a very good place to be. Right in the middle. It was weird. The
I mean,
middle
it's a
was the
nice
best.
neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, and then what else? Let's see here. I have another I have another thing pulled up on my screen for some reason. Oh, okay. All right. So this is Fort Worth, and they broke down all the different types of crimes.
Hmm.
And being a major city, our crimes could be higher than the U.S. averages or whatever. If they're like, they basically had this. They broke it down compared to other U.S. cities, right? And so when
Right.
you break down all of the cities, your metropolitan areas are going to have higher crime. Uh, So in every category, we've had higher crime each year for the last 10 years, except for one, arson. Arson is down.
That's
So
good.
yeah.
To be fair, I don't see too many houses on fire around here, so
Yeah.
fire department's doing their job.
Yeah. So I don't know what's up with that, but good job Fort Worth for less arson. So anyways, yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Well, I mean, our houses may not be on fire, but you know what is? The Dallas Jeep Club. They
Oh.
are they are heating up, and actually this weekend, so we had talked about it in our banter at the beginning of the episode about how it's been snowy and icy and everything this week. I've driven like twice, and I've seen enough people spin sideways to know that I don't want to do that.
I was one of
Um,
them.
yeah. It's not fun. I've been there before. But a couple of people actually were on loop 820 when it happened. That's a really bad spot to be because we had that 35 pile up 2 years ago that
Mm,
yeah, really, really bad, like newsworthy across the country.
yeah,
Really, we just Texans can't drive in the snow. What are we gonna do?
not good at
So,
it.
but we still want our services and everything. We still have needs and jobs that need to get done. And a lot of the truck drivers around here said snow isn't stopping me. So they took off. They made their way up on Highway 20, and a lot of them. There's a hill out by Loop 408 in South Dallas, a steep hill that a lot of them ended up getting stuck on and were sliding back onto the highway. Well, a local Jeep owner, he decided, hey, we need to do something about this. Like, it's piled up. It's really bad. This is dangerous. And so he called up a bunch of buddies because he was a part of the Dallas Jeep Owners Club, which is really, I have my 2 cents on that. But he was like, hey, let's get together and help these guys out. So about 10 of them got together and went out to the incident location and took tow straps, chains, whatever they had,
Winches.
daisy
Uh,
chained their vehicles together and started pulling everything up the hill. They got like over 15 cars, everything from like passenger cars all the way up to like fully laden semis with like trailers and product in the back.
is there
So
video of this somewhere?
there is. So if
That's
you
awesome.
look it up, there's some articles where it has a video because the news crew ended up showing up a little bit later around like 1 o'clock because okay, so the first guy he ended up starting this at around 11, and then they did it all the way until like 3 or 5 p.m. that day, and they said they were going to go back the next day, but I haven't seen any development on that yet, so maybe the news isn't covering it. But yeah, they were getting together, just making trips back and forth up this hill, helping people out. And I think it's really interesting because so my girl, she owns a Jeep, and she it's a vanity vehicle. Like it's like, don't get me wrong, like it'll crush a curb, it'll make it through dirt, no problem. You can do donuts in the local heavy equipment slot, no big deal. But the vast majority of people who own Jeeps is like, I just like the way it looks, and it's Jeep. But I'm very much a tools not jewels kind of person, so I give those guys a lot of crap for owning something that they're not going to use to its extent. But these guys, I'll eat crow on that. They definitely they definitely put it to work today. And I'm glad to see it because we almost went to one of their events at one point in time. And ended up bailing out of it, but it would have been really cool to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, this is pretty neat. I pulled up some pictures online. This is cool.
Hmm.
But awesome, man. Shout out to Jeep
Dallas
Club of
Jeep Owners
Dallas.
Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just Jeeps. I would mention they'll accept anyone that's got 4x4 capabilities. So they do actually do drives and events and stuff like that where they utilize the capabilities of their vehicles.
I was going to say, in this picture, there's a dually. Looks like it
Yeah.
might be helping out. So very cool. Well, awesome. So yeah, I hope everybody has stayed warm and off the roads during this week. But anyways, we'll be back in the office next week, back in the studio for the next one. But thanks for tuning in this week, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.